Native American history is a long and rarely taught history. Right now, I'd like to focus on one piece of that history from the perspective of three different individuals. The Dawes Act is a part of Native American history that is almost never taught to Americans. However, it and the policies enacted in response to it have greatly impacted the landscape of modern-day Native America.
So my name is April Lindelof, and I am a transplant from downstate Michigan. I came up here to Northern Michigan University to attend school, and I love the Upper Peninsula so much that I found myself wanting to stay here and was fortunate enough to find employment here with Northern Michigan University, and I've been working in the Center for Native American Studies for the last 13 years.
I'm Jason Ayers. I'm the real estate director for the Keweenaw Bay Indian community. I've been in this position now for about 25 years. That consists of acquisition of land for the Keweenaw Bay Indian community, leasing some of that land back to its members. I'm involved in tax exemption of tribal member properties, most construction projects that the tribe's involved with, and a lot of other little small things that happen.
My name is Dr. Gabe Logan, Professor of History, Northern Michigan University. My specialties are 20th century America, United States, and also peripheral subject Native American history. As I understand it, you're wanting me to speak a little bit about the Dawes Act. The official name is the Dawes Allotment Act of 1887. Native America went through two major phases. The first was, for lack of a better word, rounding up Native America and placing them on reservations. And that was in the 1830s, 1840s, depending on which nation you're talking about. And then the second occurred in 1887. So once Native America was rounded up on the reservations, the question became what to do with Native America, how to assimilate Native America into the dominant society. And the answer came from a Massachusetts senator, the Dawes Act.
What it did is it allowed individuals to receive a patent from the federal government for land. If you were single and over the age of 18, you got 80 acres. If you were a head of household, you got 160. You could be an orphan under the age of 18 and get 80 acres. And the idea was that once everyone from a tribe or a band in a particular area under the Dawes Act had the opportunity to select land, then whatever was remaining in that area would be opened up to European settlement.
So the Dawes Act was meant to make Native Americans landowners. However, this in itself was a foreign idea.
The idea of ownership was not something and is not something that is of the same thinking. There has to be a critical consciousness of our relationship with the land. How do we own the land? It's a completely made-up system, and that comes from European beliefs. And it was used to say, well, now you can make progress to not only being a quote-unquote landowner, which never was something that traditionally we acknowledged. I think it's important to say that we negotiated territories, and we had songs and beliefs that followed borders around territories, but I think it's really important to say that, the idea of becoming a landowner is like saying you're becoming an owner of a member of your family.
The idea of land ownership was foreign, but the Dawes Act and the preceding acts had more nefarious intentions.
The Dawes Act itself, the purpose, and I guess you'll find people that will want to argue what the real purpose is, but of course, if you work in Indian country long enough, you're going to realize that the purpose of it, of course, is assimilation. That and opening up more land to European immigration.
One of the things I think that's important to be mindful of with the Dawes Act and many federal policies was a purposeful removal and disconnection.
It was, from a Native American perspective, it was another disastrous policy. The reservation land was allocated up. The United States government was supposed to protect this in a trust for 25 years so that Native America could learn the legal machinations of buying and selling the land. That goes by the wayside very quickly.
The Burke Act of 1906 was another act meant to correct flaws in the Dawes Act. And what that basically said is that the United States felt that Indians weren't prepared for citizenship. So it was going to withhold citizenship until the end of the 25-year trust period that the Dawes Act allowed for. It also allowed the Secretary of Interior to deem Indians competent. Now, what that really means, I've never found really a clear case or a set of rules that describes how how the Secretary of Interior would deem somebody competent. There was about 138 million acres allotted under the Dawes Act. By 1928, 90 million acres of that was already lost. And by loss, what I mean is when somebody was deemed competent, their land could be sold, so they sold it. There's speculation and probably evidence that Indian agents working under the Department of Interior, they had people who wanted those lands. So if they got in with an Indian agent, they could arrange so that land could be sold. Also, when a person was deemed competent, even if they didn't sell their property, that trust restriction that protected those property rights for that individual were lifted. So they no longer existed. Well, then another foreign concept at the time was taxation. Well, if you don't pay your taxes, you lose your property, and that also happened a lot at once. You think about it this way, if Indians had been granted Arkansas, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana through the allotment process, at the end, the only thing left would have been Arkansas and 25% of Alabama. That would be it.
The Dawes Act was successfully able to take tens of millions of acres of land from Native Americans. However, the issues with the lands allotted to natives were far from over.
1928, the Merriam Report comes out. It's a report published by the United States government. It's a report on the status of education and health and the allotment process of Indians. And it basically said that the General Allotment Act, or the Dawes Act, was a failure. 1934 Indian Reorganization Act ends allotments because of that report. But the issues associated with the allotments that are still remaining continue. I mean, we see 1983, there's the Indian Land Consolidation Act. The purpose of that is to reduce fractionization in allotments. Now, what that means, it's easier to put it up on a screen and show people what it means, but if you were an Indian landowner back, in 1887, you chose your allotment, and once you pass away, that land gets distributed to your heirs. Well, so once those heirs have an interest in that property and they pass away and it breaks down to theirs, keeps going and going. So you've got people who own what we call undivided fractional interest in allotments today, where they may own 1/100,000th, maybe it's less than that, interest in these allotments. We've got people who own fractional interest in allotments here at Lawrence, where if you were to convert their interest into a physical piece of property, would be the size of a postage stamp.
The Dawes Act is one of many untaught injustices committed against Native Americans. America's public school system continuously overlooks Native American history almost entirely. I encourage you to go out and learn more. You may be surprised at just how much you do not know.